All right, I'm here with Andrew Frezza. Andrew, you are the owner of CrossFit Palm Beach. Where are you sitting right now?
I'm in Jupiter, Florida. I'm up in the office upstairs at the gym.
So, do you know my good friend Jenny Orr?
I do know Jenny. Yeah, she's right down the street. She did my level 1 and my level 2.
Yeah. So you grew up in New Jersey, though. Well, you didn't grow up there. You were born there.
Yeah,
Where
correct.
where
I'm
New
not
Jer-
I'm not claiming New Jersey, so
where in New Jersey are you from?
I was born in New Brunswick, and we moved down here when I was 3. But we've pretty much gone back every single year because I still have family up there. So my family was in Piscataway for a while. My dad went to Rutgers, and then they're now a little bit north of there in like Hackettstown area. Most people don't probably know where that is, but if you're in New Jersey, you might have heard of it.
Well, you're in a much warmer place. I'm from the Northeast, and I moved down here a few years ago, and I love it. But let's be honest, a lot of people listen to this podcast and they're used to these big names, Chuck Carswell, Adrian Bosman. So maybe they're tuning into this and like, who's this Andrew Frezza guy? Right? You have big shoes to fill here. And
Definitely.
but a lot of coaches listen and a lot of box owners. And something very unique about what you've been able to do is create quite a facility there at CrossFit Palm Beach.
Definitely. I think anytime I can be on a podcast or in the same conversation as Chuck Carswell, it's a pretty cool honor. So I'm excited about that. And, hopefully, if anything, what I bring to the table is this idea that you don't have to be, seminar staff. You don't have to have a name in our industry to build a successful gym and a successful box. So, we've been at CrossFit Palm Beach for 6.5 years now. My brother and I, we own the gym, Tony. And, we built a successful business. Last year was by far our best year ever. We surpassed 7 figures in annual revenue last year, surpassed 500 members, which was 2 goals we had for a while. And we have a thriving CrossFit program. We have a thriving boot camp program that we call Beach Fit. It's been a good ride. And I think that we've done some good things along the way. We've made some mistakes, and I hopefully have a lot to share with you guys today that will help some affiliate owners out there just like me.
Yeah, that's why we have you on here. And I guess the first question I want to ask you is a lot of box owners hear 500 members and they think that's impossible for them to get to. What have been some of the decisions you've made along the way that have allowed you to get to 500 members? Because that's challenging. I think this day and age, if a box has 100 to 150 solid members, they're doing a pretty good job. I think the average membership at a box is probably somewhere in the 60s, average. Because we forget about all the boxes that are grinding it out or, in small areas. So 500 members is incredible. Congratulations on that. But how did you do it?
That's a loaded question. Actually, right now we're in the process of finally like designing a really, really detailed staff handbook. And I was going through and creating like a year by year history for our gym. So I was just kind of revisiting some of the milestones along the way that kind of helped us get there. But I think the biggest one is just always putting our focus on the class experience. One of our core values here is the class comes first. A lot of places have core values. If you don't yet have core values, I would highly recommend having core values. But a lot of core values are very up in the air things. It's things like integrity and discipline and stuff that, one person hears that word, they think of one thing, another person hears that word, they think of something else. For us, we want to have something that was really tangible. And one of ours is that the class comes first. And we've always tried to put our focus and attention on making that class experience a little bit better. And, when you're on the coaching floor, 100% of your attention is on those people in the class. It's if you're coaching the 8 a.m. class, it's the people that are there from 8 to 9 a.m. And as soon as that class ends, that focus shifts to the next class to help them have that best hour of their day. And, when I was revisiting some of our history, we've had gyms closed down in the area. We've run things like the New You Challenge, and we've seen these huge spikes in membership. But I think the only reason we've been able to hang on to those people and turn it into something is because we've always doubled down on that class experience. And I think that's something for all gym owners to kind of hang their hat on, is if you can keep that exceptional And even when you're not getting new faces in the door, you can at least hold on to the ones you have and get the occasional, referrals here and there for when things happen around you. A gym closes down, you get approached to do a new challenge, or something just clicks for you marketing wise, you're going to be in a really good position. And I think that got us, just kind of building on it, that got us to about 300 members. What really got us the next step further was focusing on processes and systems, and trying to work on the business and not just in it. And for us, one of the biggest things that helped us was having a front desk staff. I mean, if you're going to have that kind of volume of people, you have to have a really structured staff that's going to be handling a lot of those repetitive miscellaneous tasks, and can have a lot of those front end conversations for you. So that one was a big one for us, but yeah, it just really just comes back to that class experience.
Coach Glassman has always said this: if the box down the road is having more fun, they're going to do better than you. And I think too many boxes kind of look at it where, like, oh, we're in, you're in Jupiter, Florida. This is not like you're in New York City. That you can have a thriving box anywhere. There's no, maybe there's a handful, but there's not many places in the United States that can support a box like that. Now, something you said that I want to really dive into is you make it the best hour of their day, which is, obviously the name of this show, but it's all about those people. How do you measure that? It's easy to say, hey, you can't be on your phone, focus on these people. But what are some things you do that trickles down to your coaching staff to make sure that culture is replicated for every hour that you're open?
Yeah, there's definitely some structural things you can put into place to try to make this happen. So it's not just about what you're saying. Number one is meeting regularly with your team. We meet every single week with our team. Every single week, we try to incorporate some level of coaches development into those weekly meetings. So, you have your general housekeeping stuff, but there's some element of coaches development that we aim for at least 3 out of 4 meetings in every month.
So you guys meet every week, your entire coaching staff?
Yeah, we have 8 coaches right now. We meet every Thursday, 1:15, and we usually meet for about 75 to 90 minutes.
How many of those 8 are full-time?
They're all full-time now.
So you have 8 full-time staff plus you and your brother. You have 10 full-time?
No, we're included in that. My brother and I are included in that. Yeah.
So there's 8 of you. So you're paying 6 people full-time salary.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of a loose term with that full-time, in the sense of, for us, full-time means they're coaching at least 15 to 20 class hours in a week. They are doing some sort of role outside the gym, whether that be programming, social media, front desk, facility stuff. And then they're doing either personal training, personal coaching, or nutrition coaching in addition to that. So they kind of have this 3-tiered approach where it's classes, personal training or programming, and a role outside of that. So if we have a coach that's dabbling in all 3, there's obviously a lot. Someone could be doing 1 to 2 personal training hours in a week or a month, and then someone else could be doing 10 to 15. So there's a lot of flexibility with it, but that's just how we define it. So, if you wanted to kind of nitpick it, probably you could say it's more like 5 or 6 are full-time of the 8, but by our standards, we call it 8.
But that's their way of making money, I suppose.
Yeah, their number one. It is their number one way of making money for all 8.
I'm not sure if they're salaried or not, but the question that came to my mind when you said that is, do they get paid for this weekly meeting?
Yes, they do. So they get paid for the meetings. That's a really good point. They get paid if they miss hours. So we do a simple math system where if a coach averages 18 classes a week and they're at a $30 per hour rate, that 30 times 18 times 2, because they get paid biweekly, becomes their biweekly salary. So if they miss days, they get paid that same amount. They coach 15 hours in a week as opposed to 18. They still get paid for doing the 18, right? Now, if that changes consistently, then we readjust that salary, but paying for meetings, paying for that coaching time, we pay for lesson plans, we pay for opening and closing duties. Those become part of their coaching hours. So we've really tried to, I think that's a big step in asking your coaches to be professionals, is to professionalize it from the pay and compensation side. And it's trying to look at all these areas that they give their time to the business and try to calculate that and pay for that.
Yeah, I think, right there is an easy way to answer some of this. It's, if you want to grow your box to 500 people, it needs to be a business. And
For sure.
asking people to come in for free is not a business. It's a volunteer job. It's a hobby. But if you want the people that are going to help you grow, they need to be treated fairly. I just see a lot of people, and I was guilty of this as well back in the day. You have these expectations set because you're the box owner and you want it and it's important for you, but then you expect other people to show up for free. So it's really great to hear that. And beyond these meetings, what are some of the other things you do?
So another big one is utilizing lesson plans. And then that kind of goes hand in hand with using Slack, which we use for our internal communication. So we use the Slack app. We have different channels on there for CrossFit and Beach Fit lesson plans. We have a general channel. We have a front desk channel. We have new faces and drop-ins channel. And that's where all of our internal communication happens. So that really helps to contribute to the team feel. Everybody's working together. And then it just opens up this huge line of communication, makes it categorized, makes it searchable, makes it really easy. And then the other thing is, so me and one of our other coaches do the programming each week still. And every Wednesday we have it finalized for the next week with the coach's notes as well as purpose notes. So actually our members get notes about the workout of, hey, this is the goal for today. This is why we're doing this. This is the focus. And then on the back end, the coaches have notes about staging. We have notes about how to choose a weight for the day, how to present the workout at the whiteboard, what things you should put into your warm up and cool down, just suggestions. And then those notes are taken by the coach who's going to be opening that morning, that 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. coach for Beach Fit. And they're creating a detailed minute-by-minute lesson plan the night before that everyone can follow through the day. So my big thing with this is it's not just good enough to be great. It's probably better to be really good and consistent than to be 100% amazing. I'd rather have a staff that's 95 to 98% of the way there, but it's super consistent from the 5 a.m. class to the 7 p.m. class, than to have these superstar coaches that really make something their own and change it, but then it looks really different. Now, with that said, it's not so rigid that you can't bring a personal coaching style to the table, but it is very structured where if you took a 5 a.m. class or a 4 p.m. class, you're going to have a very similar experience each day.
No, I think that's important. And that's, I love the idea. I know some other coaches out there don't agree, but I love the idea of coaching different hours. Some people say a coach should coach every day at 8 a.m. or every day at 3 p.m. But I love the variety. I love when I show up to a box and I get a new coach. And the only way you can make that happen well is if you have that consistency. Now, you must spend a lot of time on the programming, the timelines, the minute-to-minute breakdown, like you said. Why do you do that versus getting other programming? There's plenty of other good programming out there, be it for free or paid. We've had some people on the show from Ham Plan to NC Fit to warm up and workouts. Why do you do your own still?
That's a really good question. It would be a lot less expensive and time consuming for us to outsource at this point.
Yeah, for $150, it's done for you.
For sure. I think one of the things that we really love is that we have this 6.5-year history built up. And I think when you have recurring themes and recurring benchmarks that happen throughout the year, and after a while, your programming starts to tell a story. And I think if you can evolve that story more so than change it completely, then I think the members really, the ones who have been here a while, really latch on to that. Also, I just see it as a great way to develop our team and to be able to do that with one of our staff and a couple of our staff to have those conversations about programming. It's developing a skill set that they can take to other things, whether that be coaching on the floor or something that we're doing now. We're doing individualized programming through Active Life. And now a lot of these coaches have the skill set of programming because they've been working on it more. But it's something, honestly, I've thought about all the time. I go back and forth on. There's been times where we've followed something like CompTrain and just kind of made it our own. We kind of take their workouts and then make 2 or 3 tweaks to it throughout the week and kind of do it as is. But we're just kind of in a nice groove right now where we're doing it ourselves, and we really enjoy it, and the members are liking it. So yeah, I wish I had a better answer, but I don't. It's not something where we definitely wouldn't do it in the future. I can't say that's a sure thing.
It's the old adage of if it's not broken, don't fix it. I think to my days of box ownership and think, well, if I can save all that time of programming and, like you said, the timelines, it's worth it. But I also think there's value to what you're doing, and I think you're developing your coaches. And when your coaches have to think about the timeline and the breakdown, it's very valuable. And it's every box is unique, so you're able to program for your equipment, for your space, etc.
Yeah, that's one of my things that I encourage, because I've talked about this a little bit with I don't know, other podcasts or my podcast, is if you are getting outsourced programs, you have to do the extra 10 to 15% to customize it to your space.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
one that we had to do as we grew was putting a ton of time and effort into staging and putting a ton of time and effort into setup, because if you want to design a workout for now a max class of 30, potentially 35, it's a completely different mindset than, knowing you have all the space in the world, you're going to maybe have 8 to 10 people in class.
If we follow NC Fit at the box I'm at, they use NC Fit, has a beautiful app, etc. But oftentimes the busier classes are doing a different workout because, they don't care how many rowers or bikes we have.
Mm-hmm.
They just put out the programming is solid. But if we don't have enough rowers, we have to change something. We had a recent podcast where Fern and I discussed class size. What do you think is the ideal class size?
Ooh, I've never been asked that question before. I think so. Maybe this might go against what some people think is. I think in general, bigger is better. And I think that no matter how many people will complain at times that they didn't get enough individualized coaching or they want more individualized attention, I think what people really want is a high energy experience where they're surrounded by other people who are pushing themselves, throwing down, and people want to be at a place that other people want to be at, right? Like the empty bar, the empty nightclub usually stays empty until it hits a critical mass, and then everyone wants to get in and no one can get in. Like our 5 a.m. class is such a good example. It's by far our busiest class. And I mean, who wants to wake up that early to train? But like it became the busiest class because we had this nice core group of people that came and threw down hard and pushed themselves every day. And there's plenty of other class times that people could make time for at more convenient times and have more one-on-one coaching, but they're choosing to come to 5 and 6 a.m. And I think a lot of it is because they want to be in a group that has that high energy. It has a lot of people. And I think that you can still get in a lot of really good coaching in those big classes. It's something I learned from Ben Bergeron. It's like our mindset when we started was we want to have, one coach for every 6 or 8 athletes or whatever it was. And I think, yes, if you're trying to completely optimize great coaching, that is the goal. But what we found is we've gone now in more of our larger classes, we've gone down to one coach, and we believe that it hasn't affected the experience in a negative way. In some cases, it's affected the experience in a positive way because now that coach knows that it is all on them and they over deliver in that hour. Whereas before, if we had 2 coaches in a class of 12 to 14 people, it was just natural for one coach for actually both coaches to kind of sit on their heels a little bit. Yes, they were present. They weren't on their phones. They weren't eating off to the side, but it wasn't that extra level that they would give when it was just 14 people to themselves and they were bouncing around the room, one person to the next and creating this great experience. So I'm a big fan of prioritizing energy and flow and class experience over like purely coach to student ratio in that sense.
Well, I definitely agree. There's that mindset. It's, there's an old psychology experiment where it's like somebody else will do it. The more coaches
Right.
you have. So I definitely like that.
One thing I do, I do both now. And what I find is that there's a tentativeness when I coach with a second coach because I'm like, I'm unsure who they got to and what they said to them. Now, when I'm in a one coach system, I know if I haven't talked to them, no one's talked to them. So I'm going to get to everybody.
Yeah, and we have an upcoming episode on how to effectively use a secondary coach. But, one thing we always talk about on here is there's no right or wrong. And clearly it's working, So you every class you have is coached by one person. What's the biggest that they get?
Usually the way we do it is if a class averages 15, 16 or less, we're going to have one coach in it. If it averages more than that, then we're going to have two coaches in it. And for the most part that means our 5 and 6 a.m. have those two coaches. A lot of our other classes don't. Weekend classes have it as well. Our beach fit classes, which is our boot camp classes, always have one coach no matter what. And those can be a little bit bigger as well. But the nature of those having simpler movements in them, we found that they can definitely get by with one coach and still have a great experience.
Well, coincidentally, we said, most coaches can't coach more than 15 to 20 people. So there you have it. You're spot on with that. Have you ever had to fire a coach?
Yeah, we've fired a couple and kind of mutually parted ways with others that you could probably argue were fired.
Yeah, like you're fired, no, I quit type of thing.
Kind of a little bit. It's what I've learned is that as we start to communicate more often and hold a higher standard, coaches will realize that they can't meet that standard. And that's things like shining our core values back at them very often, whether that's in meetings, group meetings, or one-on-one meetings, and just kind of reiterating what's being asked of them all the time. And if you do that enough, and you do that, especially in a one-on-one setting, you're going to realize who can't meet those expectations and who can. So yeah.
You've thrown out core values a lot. So let's talk about that. What does that mean?
What does that mean? That means you have specific values, specific attributes that you decide are going to guide all of your decisions within the business, whether that be new initiatives you want to add, new programs you want to add, things like that, whether you want to expand, whether you want to add new equipment, whether you want to hire and fire a coach. All these different things in the business can then be run through this checklist of core values. We're in the process of actually hiring a coach right now, and I'm basically reading and rereading our core values 4, 5, 6 times a day and reviewing that with them. And we have a core values worksheet that we send to all new hires where they have to self-evaluate them on each of our core values. And then we also do quarterly meetings with our current employees of how do they match up to those core values. And each one we try to break down specific attributes within that. So it's not, again, it doesn't just be this pie in the sky thing, but it feels very actionable. So I can just run down the list of ours really quick.
But
Our first one is
before
family.
You do that,
okay, go ahead.
I know I love it, and I'm a big fan of it, which is why I asked. I sat down with my mentor, and we talk about values. We use a deck of cards, and there's a value on each card, and you kind of go through, eliminate the ones that aren't important, keep the ones that are. Is that how do you go about finding yours before you tell us what they are? Because there's so many values out there, right? So how did you find the right ones for CrossFit Palm Beach?
We followed the process in the book Traction, which that was one of our turning points, is kind of reading that book Traction and implementing what we could. It's kind of laughable at how little of that book we have implemented. There's so much in that book. And we didn't really implement that much of it, but core values was a big one. And having like a 10-year vision and very structured goals throughout the year is kind of the big 3 that we stuck with. But the thing that they recommend is keep them simple enough that you can remember them. Really, I think we've kind of maxed out the most you could have, which is 6. You really don't want to. Ideally, you have more like 3 or 4 of them. But if you have 5 or 6 that you really love, you can have that many. But the goal is to get them on paper, and then it really should take 3 to 6 months to evolve and shape those values. And we're still adding and tweaking little things. We haven't eliminated a core value anytime recently, but we've definitely added and kind of reshaped those things or redefined what are some of the actions that might fall under that value.
Yeah, so you're talking about Traction, the book by, I believe it's
Gino Wickman.
Gino Wickman. Yeah, I was recommended it actually by Connor Murphy, who was just on the podcast as well. So what
Yeah.
are the values of your box?
So the first one is we are a family. So that's like greeting people at the door, making people feel welcome, remembering names, stuff like that. Then we go into team over individual. So to me, that's, if there was one that's the most important, it's that, because so little can happen if you have selfish people. You need people that are bought into the team. And one of the things I've learned about team over individual is being a team player doesn't mean just being willing to do stuff that betters the team that doesn't better you or might not better you. It's a good team player gets excited for that. They don't even care what happens to them. They're so excited to do something that helps the team that it's not even just a willingness. There's an excitement there. Number 3 is the class comes first. And that affects all decisions from what equipment we buy to how we structure rules around open gym and stuff like that. We have number 4, which is, I'll probably get these out of order, but growth mindset. So that's like listening to podcasts like yours, reading books, stuff like that. Extreme ownership is another one. And that goes down to probably the most important piece of that is no gossip. Gossip is something that we found can tear down a gym faster than anything. It's really, really hard to do. But having small, slightly uncomfortable, slightly difficult one-on-one conversations all the time is going to just be a game changer for your business. Okay. And then
how do you stop gossip at a gym? So,
Ooh.
I mean, CrossFit is well known for being drama. Now, I will say the box that I go to here keeps it to a minimum, but at my boxes back in the day, it was a fraternity house. There was partying. There was a lot of consensual relationships being forged, right, amongst fitness. How do you keep drama and gossip to a minimum?
I think it really just stems from the top. My brother and I are people that, we don't really gossip ourselves. We've never really been people that drama has chased us. It's something I see now where I'm hiring is just certain people, drama just chases them around everywhere. And it's usually the person that says, I hate drama. If you hear that statement, that's a good sign that you don't want that person on your team, because drama chases them everywhere they can go. But, we're not immune to it. There's definitely some here. And with 500 members, it's impossible. But I think it just really comes from leading from the top. And when stuff comes up in coaches meetings, like one of the things we're big about in coaches meetings is like, when we bring up a member, let's try to quickly, we have to bring up negative stuff that looks like gossip in a meeting about members, because we're bringing up problems that we want to solve. But let's quickly establish what it is we're trying to solve and work towards a solution. Once we stop working towards a solution, that's where it becomes gossip. Or if you're in a conversation casually, if it's not 100% glowingly positive about that other person and they're not there, then you're better off just not saying it at all. So little things like that, and really just trying to harp on that with our teams and trying to be better about it in our meetings is probably the number one thing that we do to have that filter down to the members.
I think that's really great. And I've found myself, you still get guilty, and I'm like shooting out a text about someone. I'm like, and I'm writing, I'm like, now I'm going to get a response. Now I'm going to go like, is it worth your time? Like, just, if you're going to talk, be with that person and talk to them. Have you fired a member because of drama or gossip?
We never fired a member for that. Man, I'm trying to think. I can't really think of any situations where it's gotten so bad where we've had to address it with people to that degree. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
All right, so go on. What was your last value?
Oh, last value is constant and never-ending pursuit of excellence. So that's kind of the easy one in CrossFit. We hear Greg Glassman talk about that all the time, of just trying to make things a little bit better, going above and beyond. It's the little OCD details and staging and organizing dumbbells and kettlebells and things like that, keeping the bathrooms clean, just wanting to make things just a little bit better each day. And just seeing where that takes you.
Yeah, he used to say, show me your bathroom and I can tell you what type of affiliate you run. And that was something I held on to very early on. Now, with the programming that you put out there, do you take your classes?
Yes, and that's a huge part. So that's probably the next piece of what we talked about. We talked about regular coaches meetings. We talked about using Slack, creating lesson plans. The next piece of that is having everyone on staff that is regularly taking classes. I think this is such an important piece. My brother and I have been doing this since the beginning, and there's so many different layers to it. Number one, I think it is your best coach's development tool. If you want to learn how to be a better coach, and the primary thing you're coaching is group classes, then you need to be getting in group classes yourself, because you're going to be able to experience it from the member side of things. It doesn't matter how much thought and effort you put into the planning side and lesson plans and all that. You're going to find out things when you take it and when you're in the other side of the equation that you never knew was there until you actually experienced it. So getting into classes is huge for coaches development, picking up stuff from your other coaches that you can then use in your classes. A good example is tomorrow I coach the 9, the 10, and the 4. I will be in that 7 a.m. class, so I can take the class, experience it, throw down with the members. 8 a.m. I cool down. I might do some extra work. I'll shower. And then my 9, 10, and 4, I'm going to be ready to go. And I guarantee, because I took that 7 a.m. class, there's going to be something that I do just a little bit different or better than I would have had I not taken that class.
I agree. And I find actually often I coach on Thursdays and I rest most of the time on Thursdays. So I don't get to hit the workout. And it's harder for me because I don't have that experience of having hit class first. And I typically like to before I coach it.
Exactly. It makes such a difference. Another big piece of it, I think it's an integrity piece. I think every day we're at the whiteboard, we're salespeople. We're telling our members in more or less words, we're saying, this is what you need to do to get fitter. And if you do something else, to me, that's sort of breaking integrity. I think there's rare situations where you have an injury, you're training for a specific type of competition that might need to get away from classes here and there. But I think those things are so few and far between. And I think that integrity piece is really huge. And then just from a buy-in to the community, remembering and learning names, and that breaking down those barriers between you and your members and throwing down with them is another big piece of it. So yeah, right now in our coaches contracts, it says you're required to take classes 3 times a week at the minimum. When we hire, we want coaches now that look at that number and laugh at that. They go, 3 classes a week, I'm going to be in one every day. That's not a big deal. Like that's what we hire for now. And it's something that if someone checks every other box, they check every other box of our core values, but they don't check that box, we probably won't hire them. We won't hire them, actually.
Is there any box they can not check and still get hired?
There's always gray area with certain core values. Like when someone's like, man, I played baseball growing up. I played soccer growing up. I miss the team sport environment. I love that aspect. I'm just not getting enough of that at my current gym. I would love to be a part of a team that is just working towards, being one of the best gyms in the world every single day. You hear stuff like that. And then you hear people from like an extreme ownership standpoint that are like, yeah, I struggle a little bit with gossip. It's something that I know I could be better with. And that's usually a good sign. That's someone that's not going to be perfect with it, but wants to improve. But like, that's a box that I would say they don't quite check yet, but they're certainly on their way to being able to check that box.
Yeah. John Gilson calls that conscious incompetence, when you're aware of what you're not good at. So yeah. Your box is thriving. You created Rockstar Coaching. So your way of helping other boxes develop their coaches as well. And I'm looking through some of the things you cover. Really interesting, really awesome stuff. Talk to me a little bit about some of these tools for remembering names and connecting with clients on a deeper level. So what are some things you preach in order to make that happen?
Yeah, so we talk about a lot of stuff that Ben Bergeron talks about. We talk about the emotional bank account, and in the course we break down just like 15 to 20 different deposits we can do in someone's emotional bank account. and then, another 15 things that look like withdrawals. So spending more time in the deposits, things like being present in every minute of class. And then the big one is 10 minutes before and after class. Are you investing that time 10 minutes before and after class when people know that you're not on the clock? It's really those minutes where you're going above and beyond. And that's a really tangible thing that you can do. When it comes to remembering names, it starts with when you first learn someone's name, taking them in visually. So if I'm hearing your name, Jason, I'm going to be looking at your beard, your mustache, your hair. I'm going to get this really good visual snapshot of you, because we're much better at visual recall than we are at just repetition. And if I repeat Jason, Jason, Jason in my head, that's not a bad thing. It's going to help me in the short term remember your name. So when I walk away, it's not already gone. But I need to get this really good visual representation of you. And then one of the things that I love to say is like, if I hear your name, Jason, is like, oh, is that spelled normal? Do you have a Y in it? How's it spelled?
Are you asking?
Yeah, I'm asking.
The typical Jason, Jason.
Jason. Okay, perfect. So that gives me a second visual. So not only do I have you as the visual, but I actually have your spelling now as a visual in my head. And then I'll try to, just so again, I don't lose that name during that conversation, I'm going to say, it's been great talking with you, Jason. Hope you're looking forward to the workout today, Jason. I'll say your name a couple times without being awkward. And then as soon as I walk away, I'm writing your name down. I am getting that down on paper. Just yesterday we did a Memorial Day workout. We had a lot of drop-ins. I'm writing names down for our coaches to make sure that they have it, because I met some people at the front. Like, I'm doing those things all the time. And then the last thing you can do is get some sort of connection with it. So I might connect you to a friend of mine that also has a beard and a mustache and something similar. I might think of another Jason that I know in the gym and start to kind of pair you in my mind with them. And I'm going to do these things sort of visually to help me remember names. And usually a combination of all those things will help. I still forget a lot of names. And then the last piece of it is, don't be afraid to ask. You have this, I don't think you ever want to think of it too much like a window, but I think you have a window of 3, 4, 5 opportunities where you can re-ask someone's name before it's awkward. And I think most people, by the time they get to the second or third, they think it's awkward when it's not. And then they don't ask, and then they don't get it. And then they go, months and years without knowing someone's name.
That's exactly what Fern and I said on our episode about that. It's like, what's more awkward, at not asking, or, 7 weeks later having to admit you don't know their name?
Yeah.
But I think it's a little bit of cheating if you're only putting me in other classes with people named Jason with beards and mustache. It's a little easier to remember someone's, hey, you're in the Jason class, so it's a lot easier.
Yeah, I do that with partner workouts. You have to partner with someone that has the same name as you. That's one of the benefits of having 500 members. You always have a duplicate name in the same class.
That's true. So you mentioned, though, in there, maximizing 10 minutes before and after class, and it's off the clock. Are you actually paying your coaches for that time?
Yes and no. I mean, we pay well for our classes, at least based on what I've seen in this industry. And we do feel that, yes, we're paying for that time, the 10 minutes before and after class. It's just, there's so many opportunities there. One of the things that my personal goal, and we talk about all the time, is like, I don't want my first interaction in a class to be me telling you something you could do better. I want my first class to be, or my first interaction to be a hello, hey, how's it going? How are you feeling? Are you sore from Murph the other day? how are you going to attack today's workout? I want to have that little check-in first prior to that. So if I get, for an 8 a.m. class, if 8 a.m. rolls in and I've talked to no one prior to that, then I have to spend the warm-up doing that. And I have to spend the strength and skill work, if there's some, doing that. Now, if I've done all that stuff in the 10 minutes prior to class, now I can begin to coach a little bit in the warm-up. I might still include some of those relationship building pieces. I just saw someone was on vacation. I might slip that in as I'm walking past them in a warm-up and see how that went. But for the most part, I want to begin coaching a little bit. I want to begin going a little bit deeper. And if we can get that initial interaction out of the way, then we're just going to be more successful in that hour. And there's always going to be little things that you have no idea that are going to come up. They're going to come up in those little conversations. That's going to allow you to deliver a better fitness experience in class. And that's what I think not enough people get, is that they're not mutually exclusive. You don't have the relationship building side and then the fitness side. Most of what we're doing in here requires a deeper connection. Most of your veteran athletes, they've heard knees out a million times. It's not that they need to hear it another time. There's something else there that's preventing you from getting that progress with them. And those little tidbits you can learn before and after class is usually that missing link.
Yeah, I mean, what you're defining is just connecting with other humans. I was just on a podcast talking about that with nutrition. So much of it isn't about the food or the nutrition. It's about understanding other human beings. So when it comes to those 10 minutes, is that required? What's the expectation? A coach is coaching the 4 p.m. class. Do they have to be there by 3:50 and stay till 4:10? How do you define that for your coaches?
Yeah, I mean, that's more or less what it is. I mean, we're not enforcing it to the point that there's a specific check-in or anything like that. Now, if we see a pattern of a coach coming in, 52 after, 55 after for that class, and they could be getting there earlier, we're going to have a conversation with them. But there's a little bit of leeway there on a one-off instance or anything like that. But it's just more or less, a lot of this stuff just goes down to finding coaches that again, this stuff feels easy for them. Like the before and after class, the taking classes, wanting to learn and develop and have this growth mindset. Like, we have coaches that are sharing your podcast that you did with Dr. Sean in our Slack group, having coaches like that on board that are just, they love this. It doesn't feel like work for them is really key. And we've gotten closer and closer to that over the recent months and years. And that makes it a lot easier. I think that if you're an owner who's beating your head against the wall with your staff, there's probably a high likelihood you just don't have the right people on board. Yes, you have to communicate it. You have to have those one-on-one conversations. But if you set it over and over in a one-on-one environment, chances are you just need to get a new person on board.
Yeah, my mentor used to say, change the people or change the people. And that sounds like that's what you're saying. But I think one thing you do that you probably are aware, but maybe someone needs to tell you, is you're leading from the front. And I think by leading from the front, you're going to get that buy-in from your coaches, and it's just easier to get them involved because they see that you're willing to do it. You're showing up at 7 to take class before you coach. You're doing all the right things. This has been great. I think we can talk for hours, and I would love to talk more with you, but I have to run today. So I always like to ask, though, what's one book you'd recommend that the listeners check out?
Okay, so we talked about the book Traction, and a lot of the books I would probably recommend first have probably either people already know about or have been said. The one book that popped into my head that I think most people haven't checked out is a book called Enlightened Hospitality, and it's a book by Danny Meyer, and I'm pretty sure that's the book. Maybe that's just the name of what they call it, but I can check on that. But basically, he's the owner of Shake Shack. He's the owner of a couple of restaurants that are like top 50 restaurants in the world. And he has this view on hospitality and experience in a different industry that I think we can translate to our industry as coaches and gym owners. So it's just really cool to see it from that perspective. I'm finding that I'm learning more from diving into other industries and other people than even more so from just being in this like black hole of CrossFit stuff. So I'd highly recommend owners and coaches check that out. And then on that same token, he was featured in the book, The Culture Code, which is another one of my favorites. So either one of those two books I would recommend. And those are probably two that most people haven't seen yet.
You had me at Shake Shack, so I will definitely.
Shake Shack's amazing.
I will definitely check that out. And that reminds me of a book. I think it's called The Ritz-Carlton Experience or something along those lines that you'd probably like if you haven't read it, where just a company like that does it right. And, that 4-star, 5-star experience out there. Well, yeah. I'm going to post all of your information out there, including the links to your course, your social media, and all that. But like I said, I think we can have an additional podcast just because I love talking about this, as do you. And it's been really great. And I think you can learn a lot from Andrew. So certainly check him out. Any last words you'd like to add to this?
No, I really appreciate you having me on, Jason. This is fun.
Thank you.